Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I'm Peter, and I'm going to be talking about Big Little Lies, Season 1, Episode 5. It's called One's Bitten. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. And I'll warn you right now, my cats are all in a chase each other around the room mood, so bear with me. Bear with me. So, this episode, I feel like I'm saying this every time, but it keeps escalating. It keeps escalating, and as per usual, I'll tackle kind of each of the main characters individually as much as I can. Obviously, there's some overlap here or there when their plots interject, but first of all, let's talk about Celeste. Let's talk about Celeste and Perry. Probably the most hard hitting of, no pun intended, of the stories so far, and there's several scenes early on this episode because they've built up who Perry is so well at this point that you kind of feel the my cats are chasing each other. I'm being very distracted here. You kind of feel the underlying menace of everything he does. He comes home from his tennis game that he was supposed to have, and he's like, "Oh, I thought I'd cancel it." And he's like, "Where's the boys?" And she's like, "They're at this thing, but you knew they were a thing." And they have this for them mildly violent sex scene. I say mild because it's more consensual than some of the other ones. And we have scenes where again he's kind of a good father. He's playing around with the boys at dinner. It is what it is. But we have this really harsh scene in the middle of the episode where Celeste is just folding laundry and Perry's leaving for work, and he gets kind of snappy at her because all the boys, the toys are all kind of like scattered over the floor. And he says something like, "Oh, I thought I said I didn't want to, live in a pigsty, clean this shit up," or something like that. And Celeste, rightly being taken aback by his abrasiveness, says, "If you really want it done, you can do it yourself." So he stares at her for like a good 10 seconds, like a good long uncomfortable amount of time, and then grabs a box and starts picking them up. And as he's doing it, she starts to apologize and says, "I'm sorry, I'll do it later. Just go to work. You have to get to work. I'll do it." And she gets very apologetic, and I think it's not so much that she's actually sorry, of course. It's more that she's scared of what this is leading to. Of what she's ignited in him, because this is the tightrope she's walking on at all times with Perry. And it's not until later we see kind of the actual climax of the scene. We see snippets of it later. We just kind of cut away before it gets to the serious stuff. But yeah, we see her go to another therapy session. There's probably again one of the highlights of the episode is Celeste in therapy, but before she goes in, she applies a lot of makeup to cover up some bruises. Like she is layering it on thick to cover up just marks on her neck, marks on her face, really 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 bad. And she goes in and she's like, "Oh," so therapist is like, "Why are you here?" It's like, "Oh, because same reason. We've got there's anger in our sex life and blah blah blah." And every single time the therapist asks a question, does he hurt you? Would you consider it violent? Would you say that you're scared of him? Would you say, she asks all these questions in whatever order she asks them in, and every single time Celeste kind of sidesteps it by saying, "I don't follow." Well, our relationship is complicated, or she'll offer some sort of platitude that doesn't actually answer the question. Every single time she's sidestepping. Probably is what's telling the therapist more than anything else she's doing in the scene. That in her body language. Celeste finally says something that we've been I've been saying since episode 1 she's kind of in denial about, is that she's a victim. She says, "I'm not a victim here. I'm not. I hit him. And the therapist is like, "Yeah, in self-defense. Why is he not here? Where is he?" And Celeste almost leaves at one point by saying, "You're demonizing him and this feels unethical." But the therapist gets very honest and says, "No, when I think a patient is in danger, the ethical shackles kind of get thrown off." And Celeste is like, "Danger?" I think that's when she says, "I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim." And again, the performance here is fantastic. There's so much I feel like bad filmmaking, sometimes you can tell what a bad editor's like because they don't know when to take away silence, and you'll feel like there's all these weird awkward moments between dialogue. But awkward silence can be really effective if you know what you're doing with it. And This scene, and many of the scenes in the therapist's office have felt this way, where the pause and the hesitation between the questions, where Celeste contemplates what the therapist has just said, where the therapist is listening to what Celeste is saying, and trying to be considerate and not just blurt out things, but trying to direct her to admit something, trying to direct her to admit that she's in a serious, a seriously toxic relationship, and flat out, the therapist says, he'll hit you again. And she's like, yeah, he will, and I'll hit him again. And she keeps trying to make it more of an even thing. She keeps trying to make it as if it's not all him. And, the therapist is seeing right through it. And she asks questions like, do you have weapons in the house? And she eventually says, talking about her son, she says, well, do your boys think about how this is affecting your children? And she's like, no, they never see anything. They don't know what's going on. We make sure they never see a thing. And she flat out says, no, if they don't already pick up on it, they will eventually. This will be something that affects their lives in time. And there's actually a really, really, really neat setup for this in one of the other plots earlier in the episode. There's a scene earlier on when Celeste and Perry first have sex, when he comes home from the tennis game. Madeline texts her and about something, and she texts back saying, oh, I'll call you later. Implying she's busy, and Madeline's having hot sex or whatever, and she's like, yeah, on the kitchen counter, and Madeline gets kind of like, wait, what bullshit? And then there's a really funny joke here where Ed walks in and she's kind of looking at him like, hey, can we be as exciting as Celeste? Can we do it in the kitchen counter? Just with the eyes. And then he says, don't go in that bathroom, honey. Jesus. It just kind of ruins the mood. But when we cut back, we do actually see that they she's like, yeah, let's do it in the counter, let's do it in the counter. And, they're trying to, have sex. And they're just getting the pants off. And in comes Chloe. Chloe's been out with friends. She's coming in, and they quickly, buckle back up. And Chloe's like, wanting food, and and Chloe's funny as always, because Ed's like, how about you wait 15 minutes and I'll make you a BLT, and she's like, deal, my man. Again, Chloe, wonderful way with words. It's great stuff. But as she's leaving, and this is the thing that kind of neatly ties into this Celeste scene, is that she says that, and you guys can go back to doing whatever you're hiding and don't want me to see. She doesn't necessarily know, that they were trying to have sex, but she could tell they were hiding something. Again, this idea that the kids pick up on things, that they're smarter and more aware than we maybe give them credit for. And that this was a fairly innocent one. Okay, she's going to have to accept someday that her parents have sex, right? No harm, no foul. But the idea being that equally, Celeste and Perry's kids are going to notice things. They're going to notice little things. They're going to start being aware of certain things if they're not already. And so it really sets that up sort of thematically throughout the episode. And even Ziggy, throughout the entire season, has been very aware that his mother hides things about his father. He's not quite buying the lie that she's selling. And, very effective storytelling in that sense, I think. And Celeste again tries to leave the therapist's office, and she's like, we need to make another appointment, our time's up, but we have to make an appointment and then come up with a plan. And she's like, a plan for what? For what to do next time he hits you. She's full on treating this like, this is a recurring domestic abuse that needs to be dealt with. And it really hammers this moment home where it's like, because there's a few times in this scene, where Nicole Kidman, she does these wonderful pauses, or she'll start crying instead of responding, and it kind of tells you the real answer, even if she's not willing to say it out loud. And the episode, the last thing we see of her is she actually takes the boys to go pick up Perry at the airport. It's like a nice surprise for him. It's like she's doing something nice to keep the peace, but you can't help but feel like, again, this is an attempt to keep things happy. I think even the idea that she's including the boys in it, that she's including the children, is like she's clinging to the one thing that seems like he's good at, is that he's a good father, and this is why she doesn't want to just leave him. And she says as such in the therapist office. The idea of including them almost as like a safety buffer as well, if not like just a band-aid for the relationship itself. Really sort of interested. I'm sorry, Garrus, shut up. Cat's distracted me. He's running around mad for some reason. Whenever I record on my own, for some reason that's the time the cats decide to be the most menacing and troubling. So really well done, our plot again, as per usual. And her trying to cover this up, but at the same time, you're thinking in the back of your head, like, is this patching things up because it's just her continuously in denial, or is this her trying to keep the peace while she's actually on board with forming a plan with a therapist? Is this like, okay, I'm going to try and make things as pleasant as possible while we deal with this, while the plan is formulating. So I think that's on my mind as these final scenes play out. Damn cats. So moving over to Madeline's plot. So again, she's trying to have more of a spicy love life with Ed, and it almost still happens. But then she notices that Abby on her Facebook is, going to wear something slutty, or something's going to happen that's considered slutty, and she gets really frantic. She calls Nathan, who hangs up on her, which is a funny scene because oh god, Bonnie, she is like, oh, she's gonna kill you. Funny moment. But the big thing with Madeline this episode is she's in a coffee shop with Celeste and Jane, and in walks what's his face, Joseph, and he wants to speak to her, and it's kind of awkward because Celeste kind of knows that there's been a thing. She doesn't know all the details seemingly, but she knows there's something's been on, and he insists that she come with him, and she's like, I'm not going to do this here. So she goes in his car, and they ride somewhere, around, nearby, but they ride somewhere. And he's like, oh, you have feelings for me, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no, I've got my family. This cannot happen. Get over this. It's not happening. I'm really dumbing it down here, because the big thing here is not so much the conversation, but it's that on the way back, a car hits them. I was not expecting a jump scare. If you want to call it that, in Big Little Lies, but that's kind of how it plays. And they're in the hospital, and of course this leads to a lot of awkward things where Ed, later on at home, he's asking, why were you in the car with him? And she's like, oh, we were talking about the play, and this actor can have a strep throat, and she does that thing where it's kind of like clear she's lying because she explains it too much. Like, there's too much to the story. She layers it on far too thick, not unlike Celeste with her makeup to cover the bruises. Like, it's just laying it on far too thick. And but even before that, when they're in the hospital, there's a lot of glances, a lot of moments with Ed glancing on, kind of uncomfortable. He's worried at first, but then it's like, okay, there's just small moments. And then again with Joseph's wife, who also like has all these moments. Although I was funny though, because I was thinking back to the joke from a couple of episodes ago where Madeline said she'd be willing to get cancer to make Abby care about her again, and Abby does show up to the hospital concerned about her mother, and they have this kind of touching moment, and I couldn't help but thinking that she was right. It would work. It's kind of worked already. She's in a car crash, and it's working well. So that was there, and even Nathan gives like a little wave from a distance. Is what it is. But yeah, and she goes back to see Joseph later, and is a bit more honest, and admits that she does kind of have feelings, but she doesn't want to lose her family. And Joseph's a bit more understanding and says, you should probably drop out of the play now. Most of the work's done, blah, blah, blah. But again, his wife comes in, and it feels a little bit awkward. What's notable, though, is that when she walks away and then kind of breaks into a run down the corridor, the music that plays is actually the same track that was playing earlier for a scene with Jane, which, Madeline has one sort of emotional moment in the car, but other than that, we jump back to Jane because, although actually one thing about Madeline is that she has a nightmare at the start of the episode where Renata uses one of the puppets from her puppet show to scare her off of a cliff, which I thought was pretty funny. So I was not expecting that opening scene. But Jane, as always, is running around, and she gets a call and finds out that Ziggy, or not Ziggy's in trouble, but the school are just like, we've got a problem. She doesn't really know what it is yet. And we actually do have an idea what it is, because we already have a scene before this with Renata where she finds a bite mark on Amabel, and she gets very upset, as does Gordon, and they have a bit of a fight. And she's ready to crucify Ziggy over this, and he's been a bit more level-headed. God bless Gordon. Gordon's a very level-headed individual. It's not even so much that he's that likable, but he feels like the most level-headed guy in the show in many ways. But she's like, oh, we should do this, we should do that, we should sue the school, we should crucify Ziggy, blah 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 blah. But so Jane gets this call while she's out for a run, and she just kind of like screams and throws the phone over the edge into the beach. And she goes down and picks it up, realizing like, I kind of want my phone still. But she then runs very intensely along the beach and onto one of the boardwalks, and it's a really great scene because like they're not literally there, but Celeste and Madeline start running alongside her. Celeste runs up first, and then Madeline's revealed to be another side, and they're running in unison. And it's kind of this idea that like by being here, she is building this friendship with these other two people who are going to be with her in her struggles. Like she's starting to feel less alone. It's a really simple, piece of symbolism, but it's effective. It's just a powerful image. Them being side by side. So no, I thought that was really well done. And the music that's playing here is the music that plays later when Madeline kind of starts running. And again, even though that we're not symbolically showing like Celeste and Jane with her running, the fact that it's using the same music is again harkening back that she does have people to go to. She's not completely alone, even though she might think she is. Maybe it's hinting that she needs to realize that herself. But yeah, so Jane, we see her at the shooting range, practicing with a gun. And then she's talking to Madeline about owning a gun, and Madeline's like, I've never owned a gun. I don't, they make me feel uncomfortable. And Jane starts talking about how she feels like, just holding a gun. Like it's been said that holding a gun just like can do a lot for you psychologically. It can, it blocks mental trauma and emotions, and it makes you feel powerful. And Madeline's like, is that a good thing? And she's like, yeah, if the emotions are bad enough, yeah, if the memories are bad enough. I feel better with one. And she's kind of clutching to it, and they've made this plan to all go up and confront this attacker, who at least the interior designer they think is the attacker, and she's still not necessarily 100%. And even talking about kids noticing things, like Ziggy sees his photo at one point and asks who it is, and she just kind of gives him he's an interior designer, we might get some new furniture or something, but doesn't actually tell him, of course. But it's actually interesting because Madeline tells this to Ed, and Ed's like, wait, no, you're not going up there, like, the three of you, like, this, I mean, if this guy does turn out to be the attacker, like, he's dangerous, like, this is a bad idea, call the police. And he's being sensible, of course. But they ultimately, I think they come to a compromise where she agrees to let him come. Of course, this never really happens because Jane ultimately decides to go on her own. Jane does have a meeting at the school with the principal, which does involve Renata, who is very tempered, but Gordon's a bit more level-headed. And then the ultimate thing that's decided there is that there's going to be a special tutor whose main job is to keep an eye on Ziggy and Amabel to sort of keep an eye on what's happening. So that's happening at the school. Simple enough solution, even though obviously Jane doesn't feel great about it. She's upset that this has to happen at all. Still very much on edge, as my cat Garrus is making all sorts of weird noises. He's in a bit of a mood. Calm down, Garrus. You can see him walking past there. So she actually decides to go herself. She gets in her car, she listens to music, and she blasts off to go and see this guy. And the guy comes out to see her, and he doesn't recognize her. He just leads her into his office and starts talking. And we don't even hear him. After very quickly, the sound of his voice drowns out, and we don't hear it. And we just we're just in her head as she's like staring at the various photos on the wall, and she's got her hand in her purse, she's ready to pull out the gun, and she eventually decides not to. She has kind of I mean, I don't know what I quite call it, a panic attack, but she definitely like is overcome with emotion, and she just says, "Oh, I'll have to make another appointment" or something like that, and she runs out, and again has an emotional moment in the car, much like Madeline. There's usually quite some good like thematic ties between the plots in the episodes. I mean, I'm sure I've mentioned that before, but again, just some examples of like thematically things kind of linking together. And again, the theme of the show is definitely hiding pain and hiding your truth and what's actually kind of eating at you. And this continues. It continues throughout this, and to an extent, is other people not necessarily understanding the pain in various different ways. Like like all of the husbands, or in Jane's case, the lack of one, don't really necessarily understand or are able to help with what each wife is going through. And Ed's maybe Gordon's maybe the best. I mean, he fights with Renata a lot, but Ed's trying to understand, but maybe he just doesn't, and there's a disconnect there. Obviously, Perry's Perry. I don't have to get into why he's a huge stumbling block for Celeste, but so you have this idea here where it's about all these women who are hiding things in a very unhealthy way. With the possible exception, I suppose, of Renata. I guess that's kind of the purpose of Renata's character, is that she's the opposite and that she doesn't hide anything. Renata is very upfront, for the most part, about how she feels a lot of the time. To an extreme, to an unhealthy degree, where she's just accusing kids of doing things and all sorts. I will say the bite mark on Amabel does kind of make me doubt my theory about it being an adult, because the bite mark did not look... It looked child-sized for sure, so we'll see if I turn it to be correct on the adult thing, or if it is actually a kid. I am kind of expecting it not to be Ziggy though, just because it feels like such a... I don't know, like such an obvious way to go. But at the same time, it could have impact if it has been Ziggy all along, and how Jane has to deal with that. So we'll see. And as per usual, there's quick flashes of various things, quick flashes of the party where the murder's going to happen, quick flashes of sex, quick flashes of this and that. Tying into the various beats to punctuate the scenes. But there's like a standout 2 or 3 scenes. It's just the 3 of them running on the beach together. It's the therapy scene. It's the crash. Like, all these scenes really stick out as being really, really solid. And then you've got all the other stuff around it supporting it. So, and great acting again, as per usual. So that is episode 5 of Big Little Lies, and we'll be back with episode 6 very soon. I've got a week to do 6 and 7 before season 2 starts, so they will be coming in that time, somehow, some way, by hook or by crook. And I will see you then. So let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get me on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, you can head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv. We can support us for as little as $1 per month and keep all the reviews coming. And you can also, of course, check out other reviews that we've done for various other TV shows. Right now we're reviewing Chernobyl from HBO, another HBO show. You can go back and find both season 1 and 2 of Westworld reviewed. Night of, the miniseries that they did a couple of years ago. So, we do HBO shows here or there. We do a bunch of Netflix shows and all stuff. So, yeah, but that's me. So thank you once again for watching and listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?